work. Hello and welcome to episode 276 of the Filmmakers podcast. This is a podcast where we talk filmmaking, from indie film to studio films to TV and everything in between. How you get them made, how to make them, and how to try not to F it up, in our very, very humble opinion. I am Giles Alderson. I'm a writer, director and a producer, and I've just got word that my directed feature film, The Stranger in Our Bed, based on the best-selling novel of the same name, is to be released soon. I can't make the full announcement, but it's not going to be too far away, which is super exciting. I will fill you in on that as soon as I can, and on Wolves of War, which I'm sure I'll find out more about at Cannes. Today on the show, we have the fantastic director and editor, Roger Nygard. And now, Roger is probably best known for his very successful and very acclaimed documentary Trekkies, which is about the most obsessive fans you could ever meet, the Star Trek fans. He has also made the documentary The Nature of Existence and the documentaries 6 Days in Roswell and The Truth About Marriage. He also made the cult car salesman film Suckers, and he's directed television series such as The Office and The Bernie Mac Show. His work as a film editor includes Grey's Anatomy and Emmy-nominated episodes of Veep and many episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Roger was an absolute delight and gave us so much information and knowledge about his career, about what it's like to work in the film industry as a director and an editor. We also dive deep into his book as well a little bit, Cut to the Monkey, which is a Hollywood editor's behind-the-scenes secrets of making hit comedies. Myself and Roger talked about why you should watch films, why you should study more literature, how that's vitally important, what successful filmmaking is about, and why the need for conflict in films. And we talked about scene shifting in your writing and the director-editor style, and why it's important to practice. We also talked about why you need to ask for money and how he raised finance for his films. We discussed why people invest and how you can close the deal. All that is to come on this week's episode of the Filmmakers podcast. We have a couple of shout-outs this week. We normally do quite a few of these, but I thought I'd target these a little bit more that might help you filmmakers listening. I got an email from Lena Samoili because she's part of Action Extreme. It's the first major action studio in the UK who focus on grassroots talent growth and development and training, and they have launched their new web series Challenge. It's an exciting talent development initiative where you can apply, and the entrants are encouraged to submit a teaser trailer for an original action-based web series for the chance to win $5,000 cash prize towards production costs of making a pilot episode, which is based on your trailer. So if you want to do this, if you're into action, if you think, yeah, I could shoot something like that, which you can, you've got an iPhone. Hey, you never know, you might know a DP friend who might be free that weekend and wants to shoot it with you. They're looking for amazing original action-based series. This is a great opportunity for you. You also get bespoke industry support, mentorship, and the opportunity for your trailer to be screened at a special event in July 2022. Two runners-up will also receive £250 each. Competition is open to anyone aged 18 and above, so apologies if you're younger than that, anywhere in the world. All entries must be a minimum of 60 seconds and a maximum of 2 minutes. If you're interested, go to actionextreme.co.uk/challenge. We will put a link to that in the show notes. But if you fancy it, why not? This is an excuse to go shoot something anyway. So get involved. Also, the wonderful Jack Parr emailed me. He's one of the stars of my film Wolves of War, and he has set up his crowdfunder for his directing debut short film, The Drop. Jack has been in many films and TV, including Master of the Air, Peaky Blinders, which you'll have seen very recently, and One Shot, the fantastic one-shot action movie that's on Sky Movies now. The Drop is a crime thriller where 3 cars all drive to the same location. Their fate meets them there. And he's looking for money for production, rental hire, car hire, cast and crew wages, etc. So if you can support in any way, do go to indiegogo.com/The Drop. Link to that is also in the show notes. And finally, Riptide. Tim Barrow got in touch. His film Riptide is in cinemas this week. I'm going to go down with Dom Lemoir on Wednesday evening at the Castle Cinema. I believe it's 7 p.m. Come down come and support this, what looks like a fantastic indie film. I'm sure Tim and some of the team will be on the podcast very soon. I'm very much looking forward to seeing that. So if you're in London this Wednesday, the 11th of May, come down, come say hello and come support indie films. Like I say, always, you should watch as many films and especially indie films as you can, because you learn from them. You see what they're doing and you can grow from it, and you can think to yourself, hey, I could do better than that, or you could go, wow, I aspire to be that. Either way, it's worth doing. So hopefully I'll see you down there. And don't forget, Cannes Film Festival and Market is coming up very, very soon. In fact, it's a week and a bit away. We will be there, a lot of the hosts of the Filmmakers podcast. So do come and say hello if you see us. Let us know what you're up to. Let us know what you're doing. Also, look out for a blog coming up on how to survive and thrive in Cannes. Yes, that's right. We do have a blog. If you haven't checked that out, do have a look. We go deep into filmmaking techniques and practices, and we have 2 rather fabulous on-set jargons for you, made by the rather brilliant Huw Siddle. So check that out, and we will see you in Cannes. Remember to join us on the Patreon if you want to support this podcast anymore, and if you like this podcast in any way, do tell your friends. That is how we grow. And if you really like this podcast, go onto iTunes and give us a 5-star review, or Apple Podcast as it's called now. We'd really appreciate that. Right, let's get to it. This is my chat with the fantastic director and editor, Roger Nygard. Enjoy. How are you doing, buddy?
Yeah, good.
Nice to meet you. Is it morning there at the moment for you?
Yeah, 8:30 a.m.
Holy moly. That's nice and early to be doing a full-on chat about filmmaking, though, to be honest. We're kind of used to it, right?
Well, that's one of the great things about being an editor. The hours aren't so crazy early, so I can go into the editing room and get started, 9:30 or 10 o'clock. When I'm shooting or directing, I got to get up at the crack of insane and be on the set, at 6 a.m. So I love the hours of an editor.
Yes. It's funny because editors and sort of the sound department or the post department can go, well, yeah, this is my time. I'm kind of working from here to here. Especially in TV, they sort of go, well, that's it. You're going to have to wait till tomorrow. Often in indie film, it's like, okay, all right, I'll stay later and do the work for you. Thank you so much to those people who do. But yeah, it's true. It's a little bit more structured in your timescale. Well, filmmaking, directing, producing, writing, it's not. There's no line. Do you prefer editing then because of that? Is that something you like more of?
I would say that editing has captured my heart.
Okay.
But I do like alternating, because part of what, when I wrote this book, Cut to the Monkey, the theme of the book is I think it's better to be a filmmaker who edits than an editor who cuts films. I think you're going to be much better at your craft when you learn the disciplines that surround that craft. And so by being a filmmaker and making films, I've done sound, I've done camera, I've been on camera. I now bring all of that knowledge into the editing room, and then I can provide solutions that someone who maybe came up through the ranks or whatever, was an assistant and only learned the software and began editing, has never done all those other things, doesn't necessarily have the background to bring that to bear in making and providing solutions for editing. Yeah,
I totally agree. I think as filmmakers, we should learn as many disciplines as we can. So if you want to be an editor, learn how to make films. If you want to be a sound mixer, learn how to make films. Every department, hold the boom, go and do the makeup, do the teas and coffees, understand delivery and DIT. The more you know about filmmaking, I feel the better filmmaker, whatever department you will be in, you'll be better at. And I know you say it in the book a lot, and it's a brilliant book, Cut to the Monkey. And it's really interesting that you say that. And it's one of your early chapters as well. It's like, learn how to be a filmmaker, learn how to do it. It's your 3rd book as well. So have you got better at, and also could you find more stuff to put in there? There is always that as well, isn't there?
Oh, the next book is in progress. Yeah, I'm working on a book next about how to make documentaries based on my experiences making Trekkies and 6 Days in Roswell and the nature of existence and the truth about marriage. And I became addicted to making documentaries. You make one, it's like, I'll just try heroin once. No, you're going to be an addict for life if you make a documentary, because it's such an exciting journey. I didn't know. I know when I started making films, I had no desire or interest or thought of making documentaries. It wasn't on my radar at all. And just kind of by a fluke, I had cast an actress named Denise Crosby in my first film, a really low budget film called High Strung. And we stayed friends. she had been on Star Trek The Next Generation playing a character called Tasha Yar. And she said to me one day, I've been doing these Star Trek conventions. And I said, wow, what's that like? And she was describing the people there, and it was just sounded, wow, weird and fascinating. And she said, we should make a documentary about this world. And I said, I can't believe no one's done it. It's so obvious, of course. And no one had. So we found a producer who put up enough money to shoot one weekend, and we shot a test. And the way that Denise Crosby and I learned how to make a documentary was we had our own little seminar. I went to this local video store called Vidiots, which was the place that had all the weird stuff. And we rented some documentaries like Crumb and My Brother's Keeper and Hoop Dreams. And we watched these films together and started absorbing the language of film. And that's another one of the lessons in my book, is that you really need to absorb the language of film by watching the classics, watch them all and take notes and be aware of what they're doing successfully. Because then you can bring all of that, like scoring. How does scoring work? Why does it work? Why does some music work better than others? And I didn't know any of this until I started researching it. But there's like something called a major key and a minor key. And when something is composed in a minor key, for example, it sounds sad. And so many times when I'm working with composers, I say, is that in a minor key? And they go, yeah, okay, this has got to be an upbeat, positive moment. So let's just change this. And so I can now speak their language by having absorbed the language of film, which includes writing, music, editing, and cinematography and lighting. You can then communicate with everybody and be a better, whatever you choose to be, whether it's an editor or a cinematographer or wardrobe, you can be better at that by knowing what everyone else is doing, or at least having a basic understanding of their language.
100% agree. I think it really is vital. It does make a difference if that costume person has made a short film before, because then they get what you're after. They also understand the time constraints. They understand what the director or producer have been through and why they're asking for certain things.
And if you made a film yourself, right? If you've made a film, you have experienced what is a color palette.
Yes, exactly.
They have a color. They design the colors and they choose within, whether it's wardrobe or the art department. And I didn't know that until I started making films.
Yeah. And how did you start before that? What was it that wanted to get you into film in the first place? Because, you were already kind of making films. Well, you were editing stuff by the time you said, oh, let's make a documentary. And I'm the same as you, by the way. I never thought I'd make documentaries. I'm on my second one now, and I'm sure we'll make more. But
see, you're addicted, right?
Yeah,
I told you.
You can't help it. It just takes so long, the editing process, and obviously that helps you. And I've said this a lot on the podcast, but one of the things that's helped me massively is learning to edit and understanding that process. It made me a much better director, a much better writer. But you were already, like I say, editing by the time you'd moved onto your documentary journey. But how did you get into editing in the first place? Obviously it's in the book, by the way, but so obviously there's a lot of stuff in the book that is so valuable, but we're going to give you a little taste today. So
I'll give you the abridged version of that story. I mean, part of it started with family time. My dad loved to watch movies, sci-fi and horror films, and my mother loved Hitchcock films. And we had gather around the television and watch movies. And I would watch with them, and I just became enthralled with storytelling with these movies. And when you love something, you kind of want to be a part of it. That's what fandom is about, like the Star Trek fans. The reason they're such enthusiastic fans is they want to be a part of this world in some way. And by dressing up, going to conventions, it's kind of a small way for them to do that. And for me as a kid, I was just, I love this. And I saw this cartoon, there'd be these cartoons on Saturday morning, and one of them was stop motion animation. It was called a Gumby cartoon. And Gumby was this weird world where this weird-headed guy, this green guy, would get in these adventures. And I thought, I want to try that. And around the same time, I discovered my dad's camera. He had an 8mm Bell & Howell movie camera for shooting family films. He left it sitting out. And so I got my hands on it. And when you leave stuff out, I would take it apart by noon. And so I went and filmed my own first movie emulating Gumby films by stop motion animation with my own Charlie Brown and Linus dolls, and I put them through little adventures, tightrope walking on the back of the couch, and I never stopped. I haven't stopped since then. What I've done is I've just gotten more sophisticated in terms of storytelling. And if I had one regret, my biggest regret, probably like in college, is I didn't study more literature. I wish I had read more of the classics and thereby absorbed more of the storytelling, because successful filmmaking is number one about telling good stories. Nobody really cares. The audience doesn't care how well photographed it is or what the costumes are. They care whether they felt something by watching the story you're telling. Did you make them cry or laugh, or did you make them angry, or ideally all three in some way? And what does that is the way a story is structured. Every single one of your favorite and my favorite movies is a fight. From two people are fighting over something, or protagonist and antagonist. And as an editor, you have to understand story structure, because your job is to fix this movie or this TV show. What's wrong with it? Then you analyze. Well, okay, let's look. You know what? You're introducing your antagonist way too late. And an audience they're losing interest because there's no conflict. You must have conflict from the beginning. Every scene needs some kind of conflict. When I was working with Julia Louis-Dreyfus on Veep, I asked her about that. Do you feel like there should be conflict? And she said, absolutely. I need something to push against in every scene that I enter in order to be successful in that scene. And so actors recognize that, and a good editor understands that, and writers understand that it's all about conflict. So when you're analyzing your script or you're analyzing the thing you're editing, and when I'm looking at, okay, where does the conflict begin in this movie or in this scene? And if it's delayed too long, you need to enter the scene much later. Ideally, you want to start with the conflict if you can. And then you want to get out of the scene and get, once the conflict is resolved or positions have changed, or as Robert McKee says in his book Story, the polarity has shifted. Every scene goes through a polarity shift. If it starts off on a negative, it ends on a positive. And the next scene begins on a positive and ends on a negative. And the acts do that as well. They shift polarity. And there's a mathematical underpinning to all of filmmaking and all of writing and all of editing. And I wasn't aware of these things until I began studying. And so I collected all of what I've learned now because of all this and tried to coalesce it into this, essentially a cookbook for editors.
Yeah, amazing. I love it.
I didn't set out to become an editor. I mean, primarily what I do now is edit. That's where most of my job offers are. And, we all kind of end up specializing. You sort of need to specialize in today's world in order to compete. I was making my very first feature film called High Strung. That Denise Crosby was in, and I hired an editor. And I sat behind him and watched him, and we edited on something called an EMC squared, which was one of the earliest digital editing systems. After that, I learned a D-Vision and then, Avid and Final Cut. But I watched him. I sat behind him. And for 6 weeks, we edited this film. By week 5, I knew how to do it by watching him because I was interested, and I guess I had a knack for it. And I sort of pushed him out of the way by week 6 and was doing it myself when he was collapsed on the couch or went home.
Of course, or tired. Yeah, exactly. You went, well, okay, let me do it. Yeah, how amazing, right?
Learn by doing. And there's an old Woody Allen joke that says, where he said, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. You have no idea how things are going to go. I could not have predicted my trajectory as a filmmaker, aside from just, I love films and I want to be around it and be involved in it somehow. But the specifics have been completely coincidental or surprising. But that said, I always say yes to opportunities whenever they arise, whether it's a documentary, sure. I don't know anything about it, but I'll try it. Editing, sure, I'll take that on. Directing, sure. Writing, and the most important of those, I think, is writing. If you're going to study one thing more than anything else, you really need to be a writer, no matter what discipline you're in as a filmmaker, just because storytelling and story structure is so key to everything.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how we can learn so much from watching others and watching how they grow and watching straight away go, oh, I could do that. I feel, encouraged by that. I remember when I was putting plays on at the Royal Court in London, the Soho Theatre, and the other directors would come in and do the work, and I'd sit there frustrated at the back as the writer and sort of go, oh, it's not how I want to direct it. It's not how I'd want to do it. And after about 4 times of asking another director to do it, I was like, do you know what? I'm going to do this one myself. And just fell in love with that side of it as well. And it's like, okay, and being scared, if other people were directors, that's what they did. And you were just a writer-actor type thing at the time. And, suddenly actually it's like, no, it's all right. You've got a voice. You can say that voice, even if you might not think you are a director yet or think you have the ability. If you've got a vision and a story, you can tell it. As long as you can get that vision across to other people, like your DOP, like your production designer, your actors, and then your editor, you're a director. You can tell us stories. What we all do as a child, we tell stories constantly. We're almost directing from a really young age. Obviously, going from High Strung and then into Trekkies, you know, how did that feel, that whole journey there? Because you're directing, you're trying to get your work out as a director. And then obviously with Trekkies, you're directing, but also you edited that. And that whole side of you that turned to editing, obviously during that time, you directed some great shows, you know, The Office being one of them. How was that journey for you? Talk us through that process.
Yeah, you'll see in Trekkies, there's a definite editing style, and that didn't come out of nowhere. What happened was I had a great misfortune that I became very fortunate. And the great misfortune is what happens to a lot of filmmakers, and maybe most. You make your first film, you make your first feature, you get it done, and you think, I got it, I did it, now I'm in. Mm-hmm. But getting that second feature is even harder most of the time. And there was a 3-year gap between finishing my first film, maybe it was closer to 4, and starting my second film. Mm-hmm. I went into debt, $30,000 into credit card debt, thinking I'm going to get that next project, and they always fall apart. It doesn't happen. And I was so far in debt that okay, this isn't sustainable. I need to make money doing something. And somebody I had met when we were both production assistants, he had been moving up on the ladder over at TNT, which is a network that was Turner Network Television. And he gave me a call kind of when I was in the middle of my lowest period. And he said, hey, would you be interested in taking a shot at producing some promos for the network? Mm-hmm. You know, and I said, okay, sure. What is it? What do I have to do? I don't know anything about promos. Well, they're commercials, and we do things like a Bette Davis marathon. So you'll take 3 Bette Davis films and you'll write 3 promos. One is 3 minutes, one is 30 seconds, and one is 15 seconds that advertises coming up tonight, Bette Davis's life. And you watch these 3 movies, and she was born here, and she did this, and she rose to prominence. She won this award. They're little capsulized biographies. So I took that on to prove myself and wrote and delivered some promos, and he liked them. And I ended up doing that for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And I got myself out of debt making these promos. But kind of aside from doing what I wanted to do, I wanted to be making movies, of course. But because I was sort of forced to make these promos for 2 years, I learned the discipline of editing in a way I never could have. Because if you're cutting a 15-second commercial, you don't have a single frame to waste. Everything has to be perfectly edited and utilized. So that's where I learned most of my tricks, was editing these and producing and writing these promos. It's like shooting, if you're a basketball player, it'd be like shooting layups all day for 2 years. Yeah. So I did that for 2 years.
Yeah, you're going to get better.
And I got better and better and improved my craft, got my 10,000 hours in, you know, as Malcolm Gladwell talks about. Yes. And I finally, was able to get my second film off the ground after, meanwhile, I'm simultaneously writing and pitching, and I made an action film called Back to Back American Yakuza 2 for this production company that does these sequels. And I was able to practice my craft again. And while I was making that film, we pitched Trekkies, and it's sort of continued ever since. But it was that core period of time where I got to practice editing day by day and trimming and reducing things to only what's necessary and removing everything that's nice, but you know what? It's not needed. We don't need it to tell the story. That's how I became, I guess, the person I am as an editor today and a filmmaker.
Trekkies, let's talk about Trekkies, because like you say, it's obviously something you were passionate about enough to go, let me do this. The reason why I wanted to ask this question a little bit, because the documentary I made first, I kind of stumbled into it a little bit as well. It's called World of Darkness, and it is very similar to Trekkies in terms of it's very different, but it's similar in terms of we follow the people who like to dress up in World of Darkness costumes, vampire or mages and stuff. And Trekkies was an inspiration for when I was making World of Darkness about how do we approach these people. And it wasn't my world. And maybe it wasn't your world either.
No, it was not.
So you were an outsider like me, so we could have our own voice into it rather than being part of that world and being too engrossed in it. We could look from the outside, which I think is why Trekkies does so well, because it's hilarious and funny, but also deeply moving at the same time. How long did you shoot for? Was it over a certain period of time? Because obviously conventions coming up and obviously getting people's approval, but also then doing the edit of it, which I know for the one I'm doing now is taking a long time. So yeah, talk me through that process.
Yeah, Trekkies was the quickest of my documentaries. It was a 9-month process, which is lightning speed now, because my next film took 2 years. 6 Days in Roswell took 2 years. The Nature of Existence took 4 years, and The Truth About Marriage took 7 years. Wow. So they're just increasing.
That's a whole marriage in that time.
Right, you could get married and divorced 3 times.
Yeah, exactly.
But Trekkies was so quick because one reason is that the world we're capturing was so vibrant and colorful, and we had a film very quickly. Every convention we attended was full of amazing, interesting people, and it was easy to get captivating footage. But as you mentioned, I was an outsider, and I think part of the difference between Trekkies and a lot of emulators that came later is that people made films about worlds they were immersed in and they loved and wanted to promote. I love the Twilight films, so I'm going to make a documentary about Twilight fans, or Twihards, as they're called. I don't care, right? I don't really care about promoting the world of Star Trek or whatever. Sure. I loved science fiction. I watched science fiction growing up, but to me, Star Trek was just another sci-fi show that I watched in syndication, like Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea or The Time Tunnel. I loved all these things. Star Trek, I'd see it on after school every day, would be on, and so I absorbed it. Later on, I discovered there are these people who are so obsessed with this thing. And I had a brother who was one of them, and I had a friend who was one of them. And I thought, they're so funny because the obsession is what's funny.
Yes,
so Trekkies is a profile of obsession. It just happens to be about this TV show called Star Trek. And because I'm an outsider, you're an outsider, we're looking at a world that we're not a part of. We can be much more objective about it. If I was an insider, it'd be like preaching. I'd be like, no one likes to be preached to. You'll put people to sleep fast if you start preaching to them. You need to entertain. And so to me, number one, Trekkies had to be entertainment, had to be entertaining, had to be funny. Every second has to be captivating so people won't change the channel. That was the first order of business. And I knew that the people, the subjects we were profiling fit that bill. They were very captivating and funny. And secondly, there has to be a message to the story, I learned. And the message to me is organic. It comes out of what I'm filming, not me saying, hey, I need to preach this message to the world. I didn't care whether Star Trek was a success or a failure or whatever. That wasn't the point. The point was, these people are interesting. Why are they so amazing? And one of the message of Trekkies, one of them is that, there are worse things to be obsessed with than this TV show, which itself has a message of tolerance and a brighter future where things are getting better instead of a decrepit future, which most sci-fi portrays a world where everything's worse than it is now. But here's one that portrays a world where things are better. And that was what drew people to it, that optimistic point of view. And that optimism kind of suffuses them and it suffuses the film. It bubbles up out of the film as a result. And that's part of the reason you come away with it kind of energized and happier than when you started, which I think is what you want from a film. You want people to come away from the experience of watching your film a better person or feeling better than when they started in some way. It's a catharsis.
Yeah.
So that was outsider, yes. And it was a very quick shoot, which is atypical. And 3, because we had never made a documentary, we didn't know what we were doing. So we sort of reinvented the genre in a sense, since we were the first of our kind of a fan documentary. And what I realized that the biggest mistake, Trekkies is a very flawed film. And because it was successful, everyone's copying the flaws now. But the flaws that I noticed was that most of these successful documentaries that we were studying for us to emulate, like Crumb or Hoop Dreams, there's one or just a small number of protagonists from the beginning with 3-act structure, just like a narrative script. Good documentaries have a 3-act structure with a hero, with a goal, with obstacles, and someone standing in the way. And you're going to wait to you stick around to the end to see do they succeed? Who is chosen to play in a professional football league? Or what's the verdict, the trial verdict? Or does Michael Moore ever get to Roger Smith, who he says at the beginning, I'm going to interview Roger Smith, and he goes on a journey in Roger and me. Yeah. And he never does, but he solves that problem by interviewing an empty chair. So there's a reason. You set up a reason at the beginning for people to stick around to the end. And Trekkies didn't have that. And the way that we addressed it, our Band-Aid to this problem was, instead of doing one long story, we did several chapters of individual people. And so you got to meet someone like Gabriel Kerner, or the Whitewater juror, or the Starbase dentist in Orlando, Florida, in short bites. And you knew that we trained the audience that this little chapter is going to end quickly and we'll be on to something else equally as colorful and fun. So if you're not as enamored of this one, there'll be something very soon, and stick around. And each one has to build and be a little bit more fun, unusual, interesting, and funny. There's got to be something funny about it. And I wanted audiences to laugh, not at the people, but to laugh with them. I wanted those in the film to be able to enjoy it as much as those who maybe know nothing about Star Trek, but are watching this as a comedy and a portrait of life. It's a portrait of a subculture of human beings and of obsession. And that became enough, I guess, in hindsight, to hold an audience from the beginning to the end, which is very difficult in a story if you don't have a thread from beginning to end.
No, it's great advice, that as well. With all your docs, and maybe, like you say, you learned from Trekkies to adapt for your docs. How do you go about filming them? Do you have a specific set way? Do you write down a treatment beforehand to say, okay, well, look, he's going to be a 3-act structure. This is the story we need to follow. These are the people. Do you plan it like that, or does it kind of go free flowing a little bit and then you find it in the edit? Talk us through the best way you found that would be good advice for our filmmakers.
Well, the ideal world would be to do exactly what you just outlined. To figure out your structure and to figure out your story and from the beginning to the ending. But that's often impossible or difficult, obviously, when you're profiling reality. You might discover, hey, this is a really interesting person, or this is a story that's already happened and you're telling it through reenactments. You do need to know your ending. You need to set up an ending, and then you kind of can fill in the middle. I started shooting not knowing my ending and then figured it out later. And that's one reason The Truth About Marriage took me 7 years to figure out the ending. And I finally got there, but it took that long because partly what I had to do is wait to see what happened with these married couples that I went to their weddings and interviewed them. Then I had to wait several years to see what happened so I could check back with them, like Michael Apted has done with his 7-Up films.
Yeah, the 7-Up series, yeah.
That's what I learned from him. And I thought, okay, that's my solution to how to handle this film, because there's really two kinds of documentaries. There's the narrative documentary, which is straight on, here's a person with a story to tell, and you're profiling them. And there are concept documentaries where you have an idea that you're trying to get across to people, and you want them to come away having learned about something, like Food Inc. Corporate food raising, the corporate culture for raising our food is unhealthy. That's the concept you want to imprint on an audience without preaching to them. You need to do it in an entertaining way, and those are much harder to do. And for some masochistic reason, those are the types of films I've gravitated toward, are concept films. Like for The Truth About Marriage, my concept that I ask at the beginning of the film, and this is how I hold the audience to the end. I ask a very challenging question right at the start with the idea I'm going to solve this mystery by the end, so they'll stick around to learn the answer. And my question was, why are relationships so hard for people? Something's wrong if 50% are getting divorced. I mean, if you created a product with a 50% failure rate, people would tell you to go back to the drawing board, but everyone's buying this product regardless, this idea of marriage. What's going on? And so I solved that problem in that documentary. The prior film, The Nature of Existence, the big mystery that I set out to solve is one of existentialism, which I'm not the first to ask this question, but I mean, there's been Locke, Hume, Kant, Schopenhauer, lots of existentialist philosophers have asked, why do we exist? But I took on the same question for myself. Why do we exist? What is our purpose? What are we supposed to be doing here? Does it matter? Is there an afterlife? What is sin? What is the soul? And I solve this mystery, this riddle, by the end of the movie. That's how I keep people, watching to the end.
Yeah, they want to know what your answer is. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so with the film, like where you're following one specific person or a team or something, your ending is, do they win? Are they going to succeed? Do they beat the rap? Or if you're going back and telling the story, like the Tinder Swindler is a film that's out now. And they're retelling a story that happened a couple of years ago, how this one person who was the bad guy was cheating all these women, and particularly they focus on one woman and a couple others. So they narrow it down so we can experience a story, a 3-act structure, like the cheating, the pursuit, and the capture. All, and it's not really a concept film. It's pretty easy to understand cheating and swindling, but the process that these women and that this guy goes through is what's fascinating. And so the structure is kind of built in because they had their ending. They already knew what the ending was for that film. So to answer your question, yes, you ideally want to know as much as you can about what the story is you're going to tell. But a lot of that goes out the window when you start filming and you uncover new things. Like Capturing the Friedmans started out as one thing and became something else while they were filming. And you have to be flexible and willing to go where it takes you. Or sometimes I've started documentaries and it didn't gel, so I had to throw it out. And, that one didn't work. But sometimes you don't know until you start shooting.
There you go. How did you manage to raise finance for... what really interesting for our listeners is how you went from your first feature as a director in terms of non-documentary, from High Strung to Suckers, but also your documentary funding. It'd be really interesting if you tie that in for us about how you managed to raise, because it's really hard to raise money for a documentary because you're asking for, like you say, we don't know where the end, there's no script here. We've got an idea and we want to try and capture it. Obviously a feature, it is a little easier to say, well, here's my story. Do you like it? Do you want to invest or invest in me? How did you go about it during that stage, especially when you said it was really difficult to go from my first to second film, and that 4-year struggle, and I know a lot of people are going through that at the moment. How did you manage to overcome those barriers?
Well, you have to be able to withstand constant, incessant failure and keep trying and be persistent and not be afraid to ask for the sale. I made a film called Suckers about car salesmen. And the most successful car salesmen, I discovered when I was researching car salesmen, are the ones who don't prejudge anyone who walks onto a car lot. They assume every one of them is a buyer. There's a tendency to go, oh, that person doesn't look like they have any money. I'm not going to waste my time on them. But you don't know. So you ask everybody, hey, give me your money. I'm going to make a film. And so ask people for their money. And I've been successful. Some have said yes. And in different reasons and from different arenas. Oftentimes with my documentaries, though, especially the last few, they've been self-financed.
Is that because of the success potentially of your other, or because of your successful career as an editor / director, that you were going, actually, I want to tell this story, so I'm going to put some money in?
Partly it's a labor of love. It's something I enjoy doing myself, and I didn't want to have to explain myself to anybody, or to have someone else giving me instructions. With Trekkies, I had 3 partners basically, and so I have 1/4 ownership of Trekkies with Denise Crosby and the producers, and I've got to listen to them. We have to listen to each other. We're a partnership. And that in some ways made the film better and stronger because we're not always all correct. And it helped force us to come to a consensus. With 6 Days in Roswell about UFO fanatics, once again, profiling obsession, I found an investor. It was a Japanese publisher who saw the success of Trekkies and said, what else have you got? And he put up $120,000 to make that film. After that, then I started making, I made Suckers, which was a narrative documentary, or narrative feature film. And then when I started making The Nature of Existence, I started pitching to investors, and I had a few on the line, and ultimately I decided not to give up control. I'm going to just start filming this myself. I've got the equipment. I know how to edit now. I know how to shoot. Why do I want to be answering to someone else? I mean, well, the reason would be because I've got to live somehow. I've got to pay the bills. Right. And if I get the investor to put up the money, then I can live for a year and deliver the film. But then that person gets to help decide what to do, or, badger me. And
yeah, exactly. Or want to go with a certain distributor or certain sales, which you might have gone, well, actually, we might not see any more money from it. Whereas you're in control. As we say before, we're not control freaks, we're in control. And that's the difference. We care so much about our projects that, of course, we're going to be, control freaks. And I put that into a really loose term because it's just caring about something.
Let me add, there's an addendum to that. In my new book, in Cut to the Monkey, there's a chapter at the end called Success in the Film Business, where I talk about how to succeed in an interview, whether it's with an investor or a job interview or on a date. It's kind of all the same thing. You need to make people like you.
Right.
People don't invest in my projects or hire me because of my skill alone. I mean, that's what got me in the room, my track record.
Yeah.
But they get a sense, an instinct. Do they like me?
Yep.
And what makes somebody like you is by showing interest in the other person. If ideally, the most successful pitch meetings I've been in, I speak the least and they speak the most. The more they talk about the project, the more they're envisioning themselves as owners of it, as partners in it, as participants in it. If I can just shut up as much and try, it's hard, right, to shut up.
But you've got a chapter that says shut up. You know what I mean? You've got to shut up, which is great.
Just shut up and ask people about their lives. If you're walking into a pitch meeting, look at their office and see what points of connection and overlap you have with them personally. Maybe you have a love for the same sports team. So start asking them about their interest. Oh, I see you have that poster on the wall. I was at the last game. Did you see that game? Wasn't it amazing? Or you see pictures of their children. Oh, the children are beautiful. How old are they? Get them talking about themselves. If you get people talking about themselves, they like you. Talking about yourself doesn't make people like you the same way. And so that's one of the secrets to successfully getting someone to write a check for your movie or to getting hired on a job is to shut up and ask them about their lives and then listen.
Or on a date, as you said. Absolutely. Just shut up and listen, right? Ask a good question and shut up and listen. You then carried on, we jumped a little bit, but we were talking about your editing and it's the journey of you as well, which is amazing. It's a really brilliant journey you've had in this business. You then, obviously with 6 Days in Roswell, you then edited quite a few other bits and pieces. The Search for John Gissing was one. In fact, I am in that film. I am one of the tap dancers at the end. Yes.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, I remember that scene well.
We've had Jack Binder on the on the podcast before, and I know Jack well. And yeah, we were talking about that scene. And yes, I'm very prominent in that scene as a gangly tap dancer. So yes, that's always fun to know in the end credits. You said when you spoke to these investors, etc. Did you have your paperwork set out? Is it you doing that? Were you the one going, great, well, I might have them on the hook here. They might be interested. I've asked the right questions about them. How am I giving them the information to make them tick all the right boxes? Is that something you've learnt to know how to do the paperwork as well? The business side. Okay,
there's two questions there. One is, right, how do you close a deal? And the way you close a deal is what they buy is your enthusiasm. Investors rarely read the paperwork, or you make a lookbook or a sizzle reel. And a sizzle reel is a visual way of trying to capture your enthusiasm. Correct. They're going to see you saying, this is going to be a fantastic success. Everyone wants to get on a train that's going somewhere fun. Nobody wants to get onto a train wreck or that hasn't started yet. So you've got to portray the impression that you have a train that's going to these amazing places. And if you're smart, or if you want to, get on board. We're going to have premieres and there's going to be parties and you're going to meet all the actors. This is going to make you part of the excitement. Your name is going to be remembered forever in the credits. If you can come to all the awards banquets and you can join this great fun party, and that's what sells, what closes a deal. But then you need a financial structure to be able to accept their money. And so you have to be ready and planning for that. So what does that mean? You need to have a bank account under the name of this project. And banks generally want you to provide proof that this is a real thing. So that means forming in the United States, either an LLC or a corporation or a partnership, which requires documents that you file and to prove to the bank this exists. And now you have a bank account that's ready to accept investors' money. You don't want to do all that and spend all the money on getting all of the LLC papers drawn up if you aren't going to be successful, right? So you kind of want to be ready to pull that trigger as soon as you have someone on the hook. And then you have to kind of spend money to make money. You're going to have to spend a little bit of money before you have their money to build that framework to accept their funds.
Yeah, great. Let's jump into your editing side then, because it is, even more so, especially your up-to-date stuff, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Veep, Who is America with Sacha Baron Cohen, who obviously we all know in the UK as well. I suppose it'd be really interesting to dive straight into that. The difference between comedy and drama is something you bring up in the book. And I think that'd be really interesting, Roger, for us to know how you edit those differently. Or not? They
are different, drama and comedy. I asked a lot of the people I worked with, like Sacha and Judd Apatow and Larry David, what do you think? What's harder, drama or comedy? And Judd Apatow said to me something like, a good story is inherently dramatic, but we're just trying to add jokes on top of that. So you have to do both. You got to tell a good story. It'd be easier if we didn't have to add the jokes. This affects editing. Good comedy editors make more money than drama editors generally because they are harder to find. It's harder to find good comedy editors. And why is that the case?
Yeah.
Because you can tell when something is funny or not funny very easily. Whereas with drama, it's still going to be dramatic, even if it's kind of loose or sloppy.
Subjective, yeah.
Whereas jokes have to be razor sharp. And so your editor has to be able to wield that scalpel with a little more precision than a dramatic editor. A great editor can do both and does both. And action is similar to comedy in that it's really one or two frames makes all the difference in an action scene.
Yes.
To make it work or not work. So yes, they're very different. However, a good editor needs to understand both. And that's why I covered both extensively in the book, and all of the rules and tips that I put in the book for comedy applies to drama. I did find that one of my rules is that faster comedy is funnier comedy. One of the biggest mistakes that amateur filmmakers and editors make is to leave in a lot of the pauses that, pausing is the natural enemy of comedy. And the ums, the knows, look, listen, all of this word baggage that actors will surround the line with like barnacles. You've got to scrape all that off in the editing room to create a clean line from the setup to the punchline. And scrape all that away and make it flow elegantly without anything that's extraneous and slows down the progression from setup to punchline. And this applies then to drama also. You want it to flow elegantly and get rid of all of that stuff. You can tell when someone's an amateur when you look at the way it's edited. If you're on the back of someone's head in a shot because you're seeing someone else talking, and then they stop talking, but you're hearing the line of the person who's off camera.
Yeah.
If you're hearing dialogue from someone who's not on camera, you have total control over that dialogue because you can't see the lips. And so if you hear you
can get rid of it.
In that situation, that means that editor's an amateur. They didn't get rid of the
Right.
Everyone gets rid of the because adds nothing to a line. It's usually an actor reaching, trying to remember so they fill the space.
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah.
So I get rid of that stuff and try to make everything flow elegantly, whether it's comedy or drama. Drama, I do sometimes have to slow down my naturally fast pace. Like Veep is 7th gear, but Grey's Anatomy, I had to put the brakes on sometimes because audiences want to feel the emotional impact in the pauses.
That's fascinating. It's true because when you're watching that, you do want those moments of. And actually, there might mean something, but you're right. In the comedy, get rid of it. Let's get to the point. Now, working with Larry David, someone like that, or Sacha, they're all very clinical in terms of, I suppose clinical is the wrong word, and I just put a word in.
Sacha is very clinical. Sacha's like a scientist with comedy.
Exactly. Yeah, he wants it like that. How did you find jumping into that world? Obviously, you built up your career in such an incredible way. So you'd already doing Curb, and then you did Who is America again with Sacha, and then came back to Curb. Had you learned so much from the Larry David experience about that when you went to Sacha, you kind of felt, okay, I'm all right with this? Or was it kind of like Sacha's so scientific with how he wants stuff that was a new challenge as well?
His science is not that he knows how he wants it. His science is that he analyzes it by trying it many different ways and then tests it with audiences and sees what works and takes that data and utilizes that data to then coalesce into, okay, this is the final product. It's not coming out of his head per se. as it is, he's analyzing all the data to the funniest, most condensed version of something.
Right.
Larry David, it was hard when I interviewed Larry for the book. It was hard to pin him down for like rules for comedy. He says, I don't know. He's like, he works from instinct, whether it's casting. When he hired me, when he hired JB Smoove, he said, that was a perfect example, the character Leon Black. He said, when JB came in to read for the part, before he even spoke a word of dialogue, he made one of his faces. And Larry said, I was already laughing. He already had the job before he spoke the lines, because Larry's instincts, it made him laugh, right? He goes on his instinct, which is kind of the opposite of Sasha, who is analyzing, data. But they both arrive at the funniest version through these different approaches.
I love that. And how was that for you then? How did you find dealing with that? Because does the comedy stop being funny almost instantly? Is it kind of like you set up and you go, oh, that's good, right? Okay, I'll start to edit that. I see what's that. But now you're just like you say, Sasha's doing that and he's doing test screenings and coming back. Well, let's redo another test. Right, okay, let's really analyze what's funny. How do you still keep the funny if it's totally hammered home? How do you then go, okay, have we lost what was funny about this scene in the first place?
I provide the same service to both of them. I approach things almost exactly the same way, no matter what I'm editing. And I lay it out in the book too. There's I say, this is how I break down a scene. And editors many editors approach things differently. I start from the back. I start at the end and work toward the front. I start with the last take and build a version of the scene based on that take, and then try to improve it by going backwards. And the reason I start with the last take is because that's generally where it's the best. They've gotten to where they feel like, okay, we got it, we can move on. Yeah. And if I started at the beginning, I'd have to replace 95%.
So true.
Whereas if I start at the end, I only have to replace maybe 50 or 60% because I've got most of the best good stuff, the best punchlines, the best performances. Not all of them. Sometimes it comes in the first take. That's why I look at everything. So I do the same analysis for whether it's Larry or Sasha or whomever, and provide what I think is the funniest, most lean, most elegant version of the scene. Then they come in and then they start providing input, and we start changing things up here and there. But it's really the same. It's the same analysis. I mean, some editors, like my partner, my associate on Curb Your Enthusiasm, Steve Rash, likes to start with the first take and make notes and watch them. And so it can be done both ways. But my way works for me, and I think is faster. I can get it done faster. And to answer your second question, as time goes on, I laugh the first time. Then the second time I don't laugh because the surprise is gone. Yeah. But I have this sense now of, oh, okay, that's funny. That's not funny. That'll be funny. No, that won't be funny. It's like a scientist perspective of what is or isn't funny. Yeah. And then my laughter goes away until we screen it again and we see it with fresh eyes. And then I laugh again because I'm re-experiencing it now through others. And that's why test screenings are helpful.
Interesting. What do you think makes a good editor then? What is it that you feel editors should help provide for directors? And there is a great section in your book called The Good Editor versus the Bad Editor, or something similar titled like that. But I thought it was a really interesting question to ask you, because I obviously want people to read the book, but at the same time, I really like that you put that in. What makes a bad editor? Why is someone a bad editor? Why is someone a good editor? But maybe if we touch on what makes a good editor, then people can look up what makes a bad editor in your book.
A good editor is open to trying anything. Your natural instinct is to tell the director or the producer when they offer a suggestion, no, that's not going to work. I already tried it. That stops all forward motion. You should never say that. What you should do is a version of what they do in improv comedy. It's called yes and. In improv comedy, when somebody throws you a line, you say yes. Like if they say, oh, I see you're holding a duck. And then you would go, yes. And it just shit on my chinos. Whereas if they said, hey, I see you're holding a duck. You said, no, it's not a duck. It's a hammer. Now you've stopped all forward motion. So the idea is to accept what they've thrown to you and then add to it. You do the same in the editing room. When they offer a suggestion or a solution, or they want to try something, you say, let's try that. And let's try this other variation. So you just keep the process going. The showrunner of Grey's Anatomy, Krista Vernoff, when I asked her, what do good editors do? She said, they love to take a note and run with it. They'll try 100 different songs to find the perfect one. that works in this spot. They're not afraid to try anything. And you have to overcome your natural inclination. I did. My natural inclination is to go, no, that's not going to work. You don't know. I've tried things that I thought, this is no way this is going to work. The director wants to get from point A to point G, and we're cutting out everything in between.
Yep.
There's no way we can do that. They're in a different room entirely. It's impossible.
You're not
but I
allowed
look
to
at all
say
the
that.
takes, and I try it, and I try everything, and finally I find a connector that gets us there, and you can't tell one wall is that much different from the other. It's pretty much the same. The audience doesn't even know you switched rooms, and it worked, and we trimmed it down, and I've surprised myself because I was forced to try everything.
There you go. And I think that's really important as well. If there are any editors listening out there, but also directors listening to that about how to work with editors and what's important and how it's very difficult for an editor. They've got all this footage that you care about, some of your babies, and the shots that you love, or the best takes, but actually they might not work. I always found, when I'm directing stuff and you sort of go, oh, just this last one, I've nailed that now. This one, just throw it away. And during that take, everyone in the room goes, oh, that was the best one. That felt amazing. It felt alive. And you go, yeah, it was amazing. You come to the edit and you look at it and you go, there's no way that can fit in, because it's just so continuity is all over the place. It's too big. It doesn't fit. And it's managing those directors' expectations, I suppose. How do you, again, cope with that when a director's going, no, this is my baby? And how do you cut sometimes people's favorite scenes or favorite shots? What is it? Is there anything you say to help get through that?
Well, yeah, you have to let go, because you made your best case when you delivered the editor's cut. That was your chance. Now it's not yours anymore. Now the rule of the editing room is get the producer out of the room as quickly as possible. And debate doesn't do that. Debate keeps you there longer and frustrates people. So what I do is I don't try to talk them out of their ideas. I try to actually succeed at what they want, whether I agree with it or not. It's not about me anymore. It's about them. It's their turn, whether it's the director's cut or it's the final producer's cut, whoever has final cut. And so you have to try and give them what they want, even if it feels wrong to you. I put in jokes that I thought, no, it's too broad. It's going to hurt the episode. And then Larry David said, no, put this in. I think it's really funny. And we screened it, and he was right, and I was wrong. And so your time is over once you've delivered your editor's cut. A great editor now becomes the facilitator for the director's vision. That doesn't mean that you give up having an opinion, because a good editor also has to be a truth teller when asked, because a lot of times everyone's been dancing around something for the whole production and have not told the director the truth, because people hate to tell the boss the truth because they'll get in trouble. But it all stops. The bullshit has to stop in the editing room because there's no more steps. And so you have to become good at telling them the truth in a non-hurtful way. Another job of the editor is psychologist. You're there to kind of buck that person up, to support them and tell them, yeah, this is a tough scene, but it's a really good movie. It's a really good scene. We're going to get it there. It's going to get there. I can see, it's there. This is, great. You got to be supportive, even though it's going not as well as the director would like. And oftentimes the director or the writer-director had this vision in their head of what they wanted, and they didn't achieve it. And so your answer is, I know you wrote something here, you had this vision, and this isn't exactly what you had hoped for, but it's actually really good. It's going to be different than what you started out with, but it's going to be really good when we're getting it there. And so you have to sort of be their support system, because this is it's very difficult for the director to see their world come crashing down that they had envisioned, and then you got to build up a new world. And that's what the editor's job is, to help build up that new world. Beautiful.
And just touch on quickly what it was like directing The Office, because that must have been an education, a joy, frightening, all those things in one, to go in there with the team and sort of go, okay, hi, it's me, I'm doing this. Talk us through that process and what it's like to jump into an already established, running, successful series as a director.
Well, The Office obviously was great because it was such a funny, successful running show. Directing television in general is very challenging because it's not your show. You're like the traffic cop. You're there that week. You're expendable. And these people have been there every week, and they know their character better than you will ever know their character. So how do you know what to tell them what to do, right? But you're like a TV director. It's different from being a feature film director. Feature film director, it's all yours. You're the boss. It's your vision. In television, it's the producer's medium. It's the writer-producer's medium, not the director's medium. So I found it far less satisfying than making my own documentaries. It's far more satisfying because it's me expressing my idea, my vision. In television, I'm expressing someone else's vision. Still fun and challenging, but a very different thing. And when everything goes wrong, it's your fault, whether it is or not.
Right.
So the success is the key to success in TV directing, I would say, or certainly one of them, is you need to make the actors feel good. Because if you're coming back, it's because they liked you, not how much money it cost or whether you went over budget. And some of the mistakes I've made have been maybe too focused on, we got to make the day. If we don't make the day, we're going over budget. It's going to spill into the next day. And that's important. And that's what the producer's job is, to not spend more money than they have to. But the actors don't think about that or care about that. They care about how they feel in the moment, how you make them feel. So you better tell them at the end, that was fantastic. You did a great job. That was awesome. You are so funny. Working with you is amazing. I enjoyed that performance so much in this scene. You did, even if they were terrible. So I find that less satisfying to have to be a professional liar.
Right.
It's like being a babysitter. You got to make people feel good. But that's the key to success. You also need to plan your coverage and have all these other bases covered. But the most important thing is, if the actors like you, you'll be asked back. If they don't, you won't. And so that's very challenging, I found, in television directing. But it's not insurmountable. You just have to, it's just like what I learned in making The Truth About Marriage, right? It's about relationships. It's about how do people feel when you are around them. So you better walk on the set and say, hey, how was your day? How was your evening? How are you doing? You need to ask people, even if the last thing you have time for is to stop and chit chat, because you got to get this shot off and we're running out of time. You got to tell the DP and you're coordinating all these things. You don't have time for the niceties, and people should understand, hey, we all work together. We get it. We all had a nice night. I don't care how, the boom guy feels. But if you want to be asked back, you got to find a way to make everybody love you.
There you go. What brilliant advice to finish this on. Roger, thank you so much for your time. This has been really incredible. Really lovely journey as well, with your career being so diverse, and interesting, from your documentaries to the feature films to editing, hit TV shows. Thank you so much for giving so much advice.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me to come and chat.
My pleasure. Cut to the Monkey is available now. It is fantastic. This book is brilliant. I've really enjoyed reading it. So much advice, not just for editors, but also for directors, producers in there as well. Really good. Links to that will be in the show notes of this episode, so do go have a look. So there we have it. Go out there, make your film. You can do it. Make your TV series, make your documentary, write the script.
Just do it. Go do it.
Do it. Do it. And if you're lucky enough to rise up, it is your duty to send the elevator back down. We will see you next Tuesday. As always, Roger Nygard, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
This has been a pleasure, everyone. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
The Filmmakers podcast is kept going by your generous support. To hear some bonus content from today's episode and future content, subscribe to our Patreon.